Hey folks, and welcome back. So I put up a video that I had put my FraEmmastein into what I call a cancel mode, which means I would just cancel the project because it kind of went out of control. But if you're new to my channel and you don't know who I am, my nickname is DAG, D-A-G, and I'm obsessed with giant scale model aircraft. And the reason I'm doing this video, it's kind of like a part two, because I had a couple of my really good friends reach out to me and just essentially say, hey Dag, how did you miss the weight so much on this airplane? Okay, how did you get so far off that you actually have to cancel the airplane after working on and off it for like 3 or 4 years? And you know, that's a great question. So I'm going to dive into it. Before I dive into it, I want to do a shout out to one of my awesome sponsors. It's RTL Fasteners. If you need bolts, nuts, blind nuts, lock nuts, you name it, whatever nut you need, they probably have it. Even wood screws if you want to screw wood. So if you go to the website and spend more than $25 and use code DAG25, you'll get 25% off your order. So the name of this video is Canceled Part 2. So what I want to do before I get into this, hang on just a minute, before I get too far into this, I want to, how do I say this? You know, I started building model airplanes back in the 70s. So yes, I'm an old fart, but I think I'm a pretty cool old fart. And I did the Gillows kits, and I got into the top flight planes like the Gentle Lady, and I did all of that in the, actually I got into RC in 1980. So in the 80s is when I really got into building kits. And then in the 90s, I started getting a little bit bored with the kits and started doing some building from plans. And did that into the 2000s. Then around 2012 or 2013, I'm just like, enough of this. I got to start doing my own drawings, my own plans. So when I started doing my own designs from scratch, I started learning a lot about, you know, a square foot piece of balsa wood with glass cloth on it, with resin and paint. What is that going to weigh? What does a piece of basswood weigh versus a piece of balsa wood? I started getting kind of crazy on what do all these different things weigh. So fast forward to the last 10 years, and I think I got pretty good, and the results will prove that I got pretty good at knowing what these planes are going to weigh. So here is the fuselage to the MSL2, and I knew I wanted to do virtually an all balsa wood construction with a little bit of plywood for like some bulkheads, quite a bit of carbon fiber toe to give me strength. If you know how to use carbon fiber toe on balsa wood, you can build an extremely light airplane. Most people just add weight using carbon fiber. But I started laminating it to balsa wood in shear strength because that's where carbon fiber toe is the strongest. And I was able to make this 188-inch wingspan plane come out to actually be under my targeted weight. My targeted weight on this was originally 60 pounds. When it was first done and it had the 3D printed radial in it, the single row 3D printed radial in it, it weighed 57 pounds, or no, it weighed 56 pounds and 6 ounces. So I was kind of mad it wasn't under 55 pounds because that would have just been obscene to have an airplane with a 188-inch wingspan that was under 55 pounds. And when I refer to some of these numbers, I'm referring to the AMA, Academy of Model Aeronautics has some basically rules, some standards we have to meet, and that way the FAA leaves us alone. If the FAA thinks that we are self-governing ourselves as far as safety, the FAA will leave us alone, okay? So this airplane ended up underweight, but I went through it and put the baby doll in there that had the robotic head. I put the 2-row radial in it to make it look a little more sexy. I made the brakes work on it. So the plane ended up at, I think right now I have a wavered at 59 pounds. I'd have to look at my documentation. But this plane ended up underweight, okay, which I thought was just really, really absolutely kick-ass. This airplane, the MSL-1, 197-inch behemoth, this airplane was the one, if you followed me for a long time, I wanted to do it with materials just from a hardware store. I had some light plywood that came from a shipping crate. So I went and got 2x4, well, actually they were 1x6s, and I stripped all the wood. This is super shrink cover right fabric. I used real aircraft cable and turnbuckles and I had a targeted weight of 75 pounds. Now back then, there wasn't the LMA1 and LMA2 in the AMA. There was just, if you're over 55 pounds and under 100, you have to have an inspector inspect the airplane. So I got a guy out of the Fort Wayne Flying Circuit, I think they call it. He did the inspection on it, and it came out to being 72 pounds and 11 ounces, which was under the 75. So technically this plane ended up under my targeted weight. And a couple of years later, the AMA changed all the rules. They came out with LMA1, which means if you're over 55 and under 77, like 3 ounces, and that's LMA1, which means you can self-inspect, basically do all this stuff that an inspector would do, except you have to have somebody witness you fly the airplane, okay, from the AMA. Like a contest director or an inspector, or somebody has to witness that you flew it and that the plane is safe to fly. They sign your paperwork, you get a neat little card with a picture of your airplane, says LMA1 on it. If I was over 77 pounds, 4 ounces I think it is, and I might be off a couple of ounces here, an AMA inspector has to go through my airplane, which means as I'm building the airplane, I should have them around to look at my spars and all that stuff, okay? But the crazy thing is that this MSL-1 was a ginormous airplane, okay? But the way I knew what it was going to weigh is I was weighing everything that was going into it. I weighed the plywood, I weighed all the stuff I stripped, the stroller wheels that came off my daughter's stroller for the main landing gear wheels. I measured that. I knew what everything weighed. And the reason I'm going through all this right now is hopefully I'm going to be able to put into your mind how the FraEmmastein ended up overweight and me having to cancel it, okay? And this plane has 1,350 plus flights on it, so it's just a gem of an airplane. This is the airplane I'm going to put on floats. You know, I keep talking about the MSL-1. This is going to go on floats, and it's going to show up at CEF one of these years. And then I had my half-scale pits. Now, this was a kit. It better hit the weight it was designed to hit. But a lot of kit manufacturers will say, oh, it's 50 pounds. That is if you build it the absolute perfect way. This plane was supposed to weigh something like, I think, 45 to 50 pounds. I ended up at 51 pounds, which I still think was really good. But on a kit, the weight should be whatever the people who designed it said it would be. And I see a lot of kits built that are absolutely lead sleds because people put too much paint and all that on it. Then we had the C-130. The C-130 ended up within just a few ounces of my targeted weight. A few ounces. This plane was absolutely the first time that I think that I really nailed knowing what everything weighed. Now, this was a foam wing, hot wire cut. Had balsa wood, glass, had Gorilla Glue as the adhesive, painted. The fuselage was all fiberglass I made molds for, or a reverse mold if you followed the whole build of that airplane. So the C-130 actually ended up within ounces when it was done of the targeted weight. And then I pissed you all off because I sold the airplane. The B-36, believe it or not, it was within 2% of the targeted weight when it was done. And I'm not trying to sit here and say like, oh my gosh, I'm an expert, I'm going to hit the weight every time. As I'm building the airplane, there is a lot of trial and error and testing. And this trial and error and testing with the FraEmmastein, the cargo plane, is what bit me in the butt. And I'll explain that in a minute. I don't want to, I have too many people saying I can't stay on topic when I do these videos, so they can kiss my butt. So the B-36, which still haunts me that I sold this in the C-130. Look, everybody, I was broke at the time, and people offered me ginormous money, so I sold them. And this was it sitting up at CEF with the MSL-1. If you notice, I like big airplanes. So now let's talk about the FraEmmastein and where it kind of went out of control on weight. And when I was trying to save weight, where I was going to have to take weight away from certain parts that I believe was going to make the airplane possibly dangerous to fly. So as you, if you have never seen any part of what's going on with the first video, this is an airplane that I decided to cancel because it was just going to be outside the weight range I wanted to fall within the AMA LMA1, which means with cargo and everything, it couldn't weigh more than 77 pounds, which means I wanted to weigh around 62, 63 pounds so I could carry 15 pounds of cargo. If I couldn't carry 15 pounds of cargo, to me, I was just going to cancel the project. Now, if I could have carried 10 pounds, I might have still built it. But the plane, and look, everybody, I don't think you realize that every 16 ounces is a pound on a 240-inch wingspan airplane. So it is, you can just paint it and add 2 pounds to the airplane. I kid you not. So and this is the reason it's really difficult with different materials to know what they're going to weigh. I pretty much figured out what balsa, carbon fiber tow, light plywood from aircraft spruce, the birch plywood from aircraft spruce. I've pretty much figured out what all of those weigh by the square inch, the square foot, and what they're going to weigh. Like if you ever saw some of the testing I did where I took a 1 foot square piece of balsa wood, and by mixing my resin thinner, my West System epoxy thinner, so I could apply easier, it actually soaked into the balsa wood and made the test heavier. So a square foot of balsa wood with 0.75 ounce glass cloth on it, the thinned down with denatured alcohol resin to make it flow better, actually made that heavier. It was a few grams, but that adds up when you got a 257-inch airplane. But leaving it thicker and squeegeeing it off and removing it with the paper towel was lighter because it didn't soak into the wood. So look, everybody, I've tried to go as scientific as I can. And sometimes I chuckle or I laugh, like, I laugh because people will get on my YouTube and go, well, if you knew how to, do the discombobulator, the discombobulator, and you knew what the titerator was, you would be able to know what you're doing. You might be right, but I've been having a blast. My planes fly. I think they're kick-ass. So what's the problem, right? So this airplane, I knew when I started it, it was going to be a Frankenstein because it was going to have leading edge devices. It was going to have spoilers that were 3D printed. And look, when you start 3D printing things versus building them out of wood or machining them, they can very quickly go out of control on weight. Because when you 3D print something and realize, oh, it's not strong enough, and then you got to laminate a piece of fiberglass on that to make it strong enough, but you like the 3D printed piece because it makes the precision of the holes lining up, that's something you don't know until you do it. Trial and error. Okay? Designing something from nothing is trial and error. Okay? I have friends that are part of SpaceX and all this other things. There's all kinds of trial and error when you're developing something that you've never done. So, this airplane, now we're going to get in, and I'm sorry, people, this video is going to go a little longer, and I know there's some people that love my long videos. They want me to be a lecturer, and other people are like, if it's more than 3 minutes, it's a piece of piling steaming turds, and I'm like, great, after 3 minutes, turn it off. But this fuselage right here was going to be a Frankenstein pink fuselage, man. It was going to be Gorilla Glue and foam, and that's all it was. And yes, I have a kitchen scale. It's not a kitchen scale. I have a professional scale that I measure almost all this stuff to know what the weight is. And just like my B-36, most people still don't believe that that airframe with nothing in it only weighed 17 or is 19 pounds. That entire balsa wood airframe virtually was nothing. But putting the motors in it added 14 pounds. Putting the landing gear on it added 12 pounds. Putting the 44 servos in it added 2 pounds. So people, it's really easy to say, oh, you should have measured what the foam weighed. I did measure what the foam weighed. But what I forgot to measure was how much freaking copper wire was going to be in the airplane. And actually, I know what copper wire weighs. It's just, I needed to put the motors in the very nose to get even the CG to come close. And that's where I got an extra pound of copper. But as I describe this, I'll explain to you where this started to go out of control. So the fuselage was just basically pink foam, and it had to have a floor to it. And one thing that I still don't quite understand is if you take a big pint of Gorilla Glue bottle and it disappears into your project, did that whole pint goes into it, or does Gorilla Glue evaporate the moisture out of it and become lighter? I believe it gets lighter, but it was almost as I went through like 6 bottles or 6 pints of Gorilla Glue on this airplane. So somewhere, I added 3 or 4 pounds of glue probably, but those are the things that are unknown without trial and error. But right here is where the project started to go out of control, the wings. So I built the foam wing. I built a slide-in spar that had carbon fiber laminated on it. And if you remember the video where I started adding all the weights to the wing until I broke the wing and collapsed the wing flexed too much. Keep in mind, I got leading edge devices on this plane and I have spoilers. That wing can't flex more than basically 2 inches without things binding in that wing. So this foam wing, as I built it, which I think this is a sexy, sexy, quick little wing, guys. I built this wing in like 3 days. Okay, 3D printed some hard points for it. But this was a really cool wing. But it just became ginormous in weight. Now, sure, I measured the foam. I thought each wing panel would weigh 7 pounds. They came out closer to 9.5. And everybody's like, yeah, but Damon, the difference between 7 pounds and 9.5 or 7 or 9, that's only 2 pounds on a 240-inch wingspan airplane. Is that really that bad? Well, think about that. If each wing panel is 2 pounds past my weight, that's 4 pounds that I just added that 60-pound target. And now I'm starting to get too close to that 77 pounds LMA1 to carry cargo. This plane needed to be about 62 pounds, no more. So, and I might be exaggerating a little bit on the wing because that's with everything on it that I added 2 pounds more than I thought it would. The leading edge devices, the spoilers, everything on this wing when it was done, the wing weighed like 2 pounds 4 ounces more than I wanted it to weigh. That's the reason I was going to go back and build balsa wings and stick everything in the balsa wings. But my fuselage went out of control weight-wise too. So, and look, everybody, if I would have originally built this airplane knowing that it was going to be over 77 pounds, I would have done a lot of different things to the structure, put struts on the wings, and still have an AMA inspector inspect it and just flew it in that heavier category. But there's a lot of things when I design an airplane that I look at the safety of it. It's like, I all have the computer that I figure out how big my flying surfaces are. The flying surfaces on a lot heavier airplane need a lot more servo. And I already spend like $250 per servo. So I don't want to go out and spend another $500 for 4 more servos for this airplane, or $1,000 for 4 more servos, whatever I just said. So the plane started to go out of control money-wise. Each one of these spoilers here had 4 servos, pretty high torque servos. Each of these servos were like $90. So the plane started to escalate, but I thought I had it under control. Then I built the tail feathers, which, by the way, are freaking cool. And they actually came out really light. They came out lighter than I thought they were because I was trying to get the CG right. Now, keep in mind, everybody, a cargo plane, the CG changes massively when things are rolling around inside that fuselage. So the reason I had to move everything to the nose is I'd done calculations that if I had 15 pounds sitting on the back of the tail ramp, would my CG still be right? That's one reason I have those massive elevators. I mean, look how big my elevators are on this airplane. And that's the reason some cargo planes have massive elevators, is so the CG can change. So it wasn't that my tail was physically too heavy. It was that my CG would be out of limits if the cargo came to the back of the door and got jammed. I don't want to have a 60-pound, 240-inch wingspan airplane stalling because the cargo went to the back of the ramp and got stuck. I want it to still be within the limits that I could fly the airplane. Okay? That's why I said I don't want to have a dangerous airplane. It's not because I think structurally it might fall apart, which if it was over 77 pounds, I would have had to put struts on the wings. But this plane started to escalate out of control, okay? And this happens when you build something from nothing in your mind. Every one of my builds has had trial and error, but most of them I keep under, well, all of them I've kept under control up to this point. And this plane could have flown. I could have put wing struts on it and probably begged an inspector to pass it being over 77 pounds. But for me, who I am, and the way that I love the AMA, I just don't want to put myself in that kind of risk. I just don't want that kind of risk. So this is where the plane really started to add weight. So at this point, it was sitting in my garage. I was getting a little bit frustrated with the way the wing was mounting, because there were 8 all threads that ran through the top of the wing all the way bottom of the fuselage and grabbed the landing gear at the bottom that held the wing to the bottom of the fuselage, because you don't want to just run some drywall screws through the wing into the top of the fuselage and think the wing's going to stay on. Okay, that ain't going to work. So the thing is that when just those all threads weighed 2.5 pounds. So I was looking at taking aluminum and threading the aluminum and putting pins through them. Aluminum got so expensive, it's going to cost me $100 just for those 8 pieces of aluminum. And then me thread them, and then I don't even know if that's going to work. So it was just starting to become chaos trying to figure out how to make this work. But this is where it gained the most weight. This landing gear here is a welded up contraption. It's got torsion bars. It's got 3/8 inch fiberglass torsion bars. But the original landing gear weighed like 6.5 pounds. For this plane to hold everything at 77 pounds, the landing gear ended up weighing closer to 12 pounds. That's 6 pounds I added to the airplane. Now, you all know I brought the airplane home, delaminated the whole airplane, and put a glass cloth back on it that was 0.75 ounces. That took a lot of weight off, but it was only like 2 pounds. So now I'm juggling. Okay, where do I want to take weight from because my landing gear is going to be heavy? Where do I take weight from because my all thread's heavy? Okay? Building model aircraft, scratch building them yourself from your own design and your own drawings is trial and error, folks. So the landing gear was a beast. This is another thing is, and a lot of people don't understand this, I have a 1.7 pound rack that slides into the back of the airplane that helps drop cargo. So basically the way that rack was going to work was, it was almost like it wasn't a conveyor belt, but it had a little chain on it. The chain had a hook. I had a motor hook to it, and once that started to run, the little hooks would push the cargo down the track, drop it out the back. A pilot, a free bag would pull out the pilot chute would pull out the big parachute, and it would look really sexy in the air. That right there had to be in the airplane for me to drop cargo. I can't just put the plane up in the air and let all the cargo slide out the back. Well, I could have, but it looks stupid. So this is how this project went out of control. It was many little things, folks. It wasn't that I didn't have a kitchen calculator, a kitchen scale, and I didn't have a calculator, and I'm just like, hey, y'all, watch this. It escalated out of control. Now, if somebody were to say to me, Dag, in hindsight, what would you have done to make this plane lighter? I would have designed the nacelles totally different. These nacelles each weigh like 2 pounds of foam. Okay, they're hollow, but the way they're attached to the wing, keep in mind, these motors turn, it's a 21 14 3-bladed prop. These are like 2,800 watt motors, 4 of them. So this is a lot of power. Each one of these have like 15 pounds of thrust, so it'd be 30 pounds of thrust on each wing. These nacelles had to be built. I used some, I'm trying to remember what it's called, the honeycomb that I'd gotten that came from some airline that was throwing it away. So the firewalls were made out of honeycomb, which were extremely light. But I had to put reinforcements down this foam, the way it attached to the spar, the wing tubes, and the surface of the wing. So those 2 nacelles are just fat pigs. They're fat pigs. And in hindsight, I would have done that differently. If you look down on the bottom of this picture, the covers that cover the landing gear, those foam things, those things weigh 1 pound each. I could have built up out of balsa wood and covered it with monocoat just to cover the landing gear, or leave the landing gear exposed and save 2 pounds right there. Keep in mind, folks, my targeted weight was 60 pounds, 62 pounds. But the moment I go over 62 pounds, I'm taking away from the cargo I can carry on this airplane. So once I get to 70 pounds and I can only carry 7 pounds of weight, you know, realistically, I'm only like 8 pounds on a 240-inch wingspan plane overweight. Now you say 8 pounds sounds like a lot. Well, a gallon of milk weighs 8 pounds the world around, I think is the saying. So imagine a gallon of milk. Imagine a gallon of milk as cargo. How cool would it be to drop a watermelon from this thing? It just got too far out of specs for me to continue it. Now, I already had somebody call me up and say, hey, would you sell me the plane? I'm not selling this thing, folks. I don't trust the spars to carry a lot more weight than I was designing it for. And plus, when I was done with this thing, I was going to do my own testing on the wing and everything. And if it didn't pass, I never would have flown the plane. Okay? But when you think about just the motors on this, the wiring, the landing gear, and basically you take the landing gear, the extra copper wire, you take the ability for the CG to move a little bit, you take my launching apparatus or drop apparatus, you put all those things in this airplane, and all of those things basically added up to the 8 pounds that I was pushing over my limit. And it was like 5 things, it wasn't one thing. Now, could I have built these wings so freaking light and put struts on them that I could have still been close to my 62 pounds? I don't think so, and it's not worth the expenditure of money, folks. It's just not worth it. I've got an ultralight I'm finishing. I've got the MSL-1 going to go on floats. I have a top secret project I'm working on for a buddy that I can't really talk about, that I don't know if you'll ever see fly. I just got too many things going on for me to keep pouring money into this. And I'm not going to lie to the AMA. I'm not going to lie. That's just not me. But, yeah, folks, this is pretty much, kind of looks like somebody said the nacelles look like a Rutan design, which to me is a huge compliment because Rutan's one of my most favorite people in the world, all of their designs. But that's pretty much it, folks. That's why this went out of control. And I guess in the other video, I should explain that a little bit more. But anytime you're inventing something from nothing, you normally have a lot of different stages at which point you can abort your design or abort the takeoff. And I always try to, how do I say this? I always try to create something that other people haven't created. And I'm not just doing it to say, hey, look at what I'm doing. I'm doing it because can you imagine how fun it would be to have this transport plane flying? My buddy Eamon and a couple of other drone pilots trying to come in the back and land their drones in the back of this cargo plane. That was the biggest dream of this, was to be able to have drone pilots fly in the back end, right up the rear, land in it, turn around their drones, and then launch back out while I'm flying this behemoth in the sky. Okay, so do I feel bad that I missed the mark? No. Do I feel bad that I'm canceling it? Yeah, because I wanted to fly the airplane. Do I feel bad that I made a mistake? No. The things I learned on this, I learned so much doing this foam and doing the engine nacelles the way I did and doing these landing gears with the torsion bars. I'd never done torsion bars on an RC airplane. There's so much that I learned doing this that I don't think in any way at all that it wasn't worth it. But you don't know what you can do until you try. And I'm getting ready to do a video on, I've got a couple of people reach out to me and said, look, every time I build an airplane, I'm just too scared to fly it because if I crash it, I got to start all over. And the thing, and my dog just came in here, so if you hear him breathing and making a bunch of noise. But you don't know what you can do unless you try. And, every time I have one of these anomalies where I fail or I miss the target, it seems like people come out of the woodwork and go, well, you guys don't know what you're doing, or, if you're a true engineer. And I'm not a true anything except my passion for aviation. And I've got a kick-ass record of success, too. So one reason I created this channel was to share with you my highs and lows. I can't stand these people that come on YouTube and go, oh, you should do this, this, and this, and they've never done it themselves. People waste so much money, and that happened to me back in the day. Somebody told me to do something with carbon fiber. I did it, and it was a crock of crap. And I'm like, well, that didn't work. And I asked them, I said, can you show me examples how you did it? And they're like, oh, I've never done it. I just saw somebody else do it. Well, they evidently didn't see how they did it right. Okay? So I'm going to quit babbling here, folks. If I can just get one person watching my channel to try something they've never done, okay, to try to build something, even if it doesn't work, what you learn in the process is just extremely intense. And yeah, I guess that's my whole thing, is that, you know, the video I'm working on right now about people that build planes or too scared to fly them, I was there a long, long time ago in my life. I remember building a Tiger II by Carl Goldberg. And, oh, and I think I said earlier that the Gentle Lady was Top Flight. The Gentle Lady was Carl Goldberg. So if you're still watching the video and you haven't already commented, I'm full of crap, then you should have watched the whole video. But I remember when I built that Sky Tiger II, and it was immaculate. The monocoat was perfect. I didn't get glue all over the canopy when I glued the canopy on. I was so scared to fly that airplane. And 8 months later, you know, I'm flying inverted down the runway time to try to touch the tail on the ground. So, you know, we got to have fun in this hobby. You can't take it so seriously that you can't enjoy flying the airplane you build. But I'm going to talk about that in a future video, and I'm sorry that I digress. So rock on, everybody. Thanks for watching my videos. I always end them talking about getting kids involved. Okay? Next year, I'm going to go all over Indiana to different RC clubs when they have like their open night flying, and try to get as many kids there as possible. I'll bring one of my big airplanes. I'll bring my Flex Cessna 170, which I think is the greatest airplane in the world right now. And I will do everything to get mom and dad to get their kid off the video game, get them off their iPhone, and get them to come see a model airplane fly. And people say to me, yeah, but parents don't want to commit to the time. A lot of parents commit to taking their kids to hockey, soccer, baseball, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. They commit to all these things of taking their kids to it. And most of them end up with business degrees and then become car salesmen. But people who fly model airplanes ends up as engineers at Purdue and then ends up building rockets one day. So, okay, folks, that's it. So, hey, thanks. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please like and subscribe. I'm trying to build my YouTube. I'm trying to get my Patreon, my YouTube, and sponsorships to pay for my hobby. So maybe if my YouTube was making me like $2,000 a month, I wouldn't have scrapped this project. So, hey, be safe, be nice to each other, and I'll see you all next time. Rock on. Bye.